In this video, we'll be talking about how we can use a few mathematical functions such as COUNTA, COUNTIF, and divide to make our day-to-day calculations much more efficient. So if you look at my list here of students, you can see that I have all the students in this column here. And there's a few ways that we can count all our students. So you can select all the data as I just did, and you'll see that on the bottom it will actually give you a count of all the students. There's another way to do it, which I think is better, and it's called the COUNTA formula. So I'm going to, in this cell right here, I'm going to type in equals COUNTA, and then I'll open up the parentheses. And I'll start with the students, with the first student on the list, and I'm going to drag down, and let's go all the way down to cell A90, and you'll see the range of the cell. It's A2 colon A90. So that just tells you that A2 is the first cell of the range, A90 is the last cell of the range. I'm going to press return. So A2, it will now give you the count of all the students from A2 all the way down to A90. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that sounds a lot more complicated than just selecting all the names, looking at the count on the bottom of the list. Why would I want to do it that way? Well, for example, let's say I have a student named Donald Curtis who quits band, and I delete it. I delete his name. You'll see the number up here change automatically. I didn't have to highlight it a second time. Or let's say I have another student named John Williams who joins band, and I'll put his name right here, John Williams. And because I'm counting from cell A2 all the way down to A90, you'll see that when I type in his name, John and Williams in the other cell, that the number automatically changes. So that's the benefit of having COUNTA as your formula, especially if you have multiple functions that count on this one, or multiple formulas in your spreadsheet that count on this one calculation. Another way that another formula that could be super useful for us is COUNTIF. So for example, I have all the students in this column, and let's say I'm looking at the week of November 12th. I have all the students in this column, and I want to count all the students who are present in this column. So I can use a COUNTIF formula to count all the students who are present. So I'll type in first equals COUNTIF, and then I'll open up the parentheses. And first thing I need to do to count all the students who are present, in other words, all the students who are labeled as P in this range, is to know where I'm doing the counting. So I'm going to start on this cell here, H2. I'm going to count from here all the way down to here, H66. That's where I'm doing the counting. So that's the range. H2, that's the first cell of the range, colon H66, that's the last cell of the range. And I type in a comma. And then I'm going to type in the criteria for a student to be counted. And the criteria is that it has to say P, not A, P. So I'm going to open up the quotes, and then I'm going to type in the letter P and close the quotes. And because it's text, it needs to be put in quotes. I'm going to press return and reject the autofill. Now I'm going to just drag the number over. I put my mouse over the blue dot and drag it over. And you'll see that we'll do the same thing now for the rest of the cells. So you can see that all the way until this week it's counting the number of students who were present at lessons. Let's do the same thing for absent. So again, equals, and then COUNTIF. Open up the parentheses. Select the first cell in the range. We go all the way down to the last cell in the range. You'll see H2 colon H66, that's the range, comma, and let's put an A as the criteria, and has A in quotes. Press return, and you'll see that we have 10 students who are absent for this week. We're going to drag it over for the rest of the weeks. So we see here that now we have 14 students in the week of January 9th, 10 students for the week of November 12th that were absent. Let's add in another row above this one here, which is present versus all absence. So we want to count, let's say we want to count all the students first. Or you know what? Let's first type in here, let's delete that and type in all students instead. And that's just going to be equals the students who are present, so that's cell H66, plus the students who were absent. And that will give me the total number of students who were eligible for a lesson that week. So I drag it over. And you can see for each week it's pretty much 65. Now the reason why I don't just write down 65 or I don't just assume is because there might be a week when I was sick and that student's lesson was canceled. Or a student might quit band and I want to have their record still for that week. And so after they quit band, I might just leave the rest of the rest of that student's row empty. And then for that reason, it would end up being 64 students instead of 65. Now, if I want to do a percentage, I can say percentage present. And let's make that bold. So I click on it, and I'm going to click on bold. I'm going to type over here equals, click on the cell of the student who is present, of the number of students who are present, divide, and then click on all students. So what we're doing is that we're dividing the number of students who are present by the number of students by the total number of students. I press return, and you'll see that actually gives it to me as a decimal. We want that to be a percentage. So all you need to do is click on this percent sign right here, format as a percent. Put your mouse over the blue dot, drag it over, and you will see that it does the same for the rest of the weeks. So that's how we can use the COUNTA and COUNTIF and divide and plus to make that easier for ourselves when deciding how many, when trying to calculate our attendance for each week or for each rehearsal. Now let's do the same thing for each individual student. Let's say I want to calculate each individual student's attendance. So as before, I'm going to type into cell D2 equals COUNTIF, open the parentheses, and then I'm going to select the range where I want to do the counting. So I want it to count from H2 all the way down to the end of the spreadsheet. Now you can obviously tell that this takes a long time. Now remember that the letter is actually what tells you the column. But if I wanted to go all the way to the end with no matter what column is the last one, I can just delete the AN part, the letter part of it, and we'll just go all the way to the end automatically. Even if you add columns later on, it will go all the way to the end. So that's why it's H2:2. In other words, I got rid of the column that told me I got rid of the end column. I got rid of the column of the letter that told me which was the last column in the range. I type in a comma again, and this time the criteria, P. So it's the range, comma, and the criteria in quotes, which is P. I press return, and then I'm just going to reject the autofill just so that you can see how I can click on the cell, put my mouse over the blue dot and drag it down, and you'll see that we'll count the total number of lessons where each student was present. Let's do the same thing for the number of students who are absent. So I'm going to type in equals COUNTIF, click on the first cell of this range, H2, drag it over, and then just get rid of the end column. So in other words, J2, that's the last column in the range. If I delete the J, then we'll just keep on going to the end. And that way you don't have to keep on dragging. Go to the end of that function, at the end of the range, in the formula, type in a comma, type in A in quotes, press return. And then, as before, click on the middle of the cell, then click on the blue dot and drag down. You can also double click, and we'll do the same thing for the rest of the students in that range. Now the total number of lessons, that's just going to be equals the number of present lessons plus the number of lessons where they were absent. So it's just D2 plus E2. Press return, put your mouse over the cell and click on it, then put your mouse over the blue dot and double click. and you'll see that we'll calculate the total number of lessons for every student. To calculate the attendance, we're under cell C2. In cell C2, we're going to type in equals, click on the total number of lessons where the student was present, divide that by the total number of lessons, and press return. So it's D2/F2. The slash means divide. Press return. And then drag it down or double click on the blue dot, and you will see that we'll do the same thing now for all of the students. I hope you found this video on COUNTA, COUNTIF, and divide useful.